We're probably streaming live. I somehow always miss this cue, which makes for an incredibly Good morning, everyone. And good morning, Heather Ruce.
Good morning.
And in a moment, because of the delay, they'll let us know if they can hear us or not. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Sam.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well. I'm sharing or I'm doing gallery.
Me too.
Just for this opening. And Kathy is wishing us all God's blessings today. Yes, please.
Excellent.
So we'll just wait for some folks to join. How you doing, Heather? How's your morning been?
It's been a very pleasant morning and strange times we're living in though, right?
It's so strange. Our like sleep rhythms feel out of whack. We're trying to regulate that again, but there were so many nights where I'm like, it is 1 o'clock in the morning. Why are we still awake? And last night I was just so tired. And so it was like 9 and I'm like, I have to go to bed. And then at 9:45 at night, we get this like pound on the door, and it scared me to death because no one's out there in the world mostly. And it was our neighbor, Michael, with 4 like quarts of ice cream from Mariposa's, because yesterday, Mariposa's Ice Cream, our favorite neighborhood ice cream shop that Heather and I have been to many times, homemade deliciousness, mom and pop place. It's like a feature in our neighborhood. They reopened, and so.
Oh, what a fun, scary surprise.
We have a ton of ice cream, which is good and bad for us. And also, as we get started, I'm going to show you one more funny thing. My sister Jenna gave these to me yesterday. They're Jesus Band-Aids.
Nice.
And I just, they're like, anyway, I just feel like between Jesus Band-Aids and Mariposa's ice cream, anything is possible, people. Anything is possible.
I want to know what the free prize is in there.
We did too, which is why I opened them immediately. You're going to get a chuckle out of this. It is a tiny squirrel tattoo.
Perfect.
But the funny thing is it must be intentional because, the Sunday school answer is always squirrel or Jesus, it seems. Kids are like squirrel. And then, or the other answer is Jesus.
Perfect.
I don't know. It could have just been totally random, but hi, good morning, everyone. And Heather, I don't know if I'm watching the chat, but you're just on my Zoom. But we have a lot of dear friends with us this morning. And some people are gutting closets and others are joining us from work. And then a couple of wisdom people are on here, like Sarah Wildman. And so it's so good. It's so good to see all of you this morning, kind of to see you in presence, if not face to face. Friends, it is my great joy to have Heather Ruce with us. Heather is a lot of things to a lot of people, but I have the tremendous gift of calling her one of my very best friends. I have a lot of good friends, and then I have like a very tight, tiny inner circle that holds the enormity of my being. And Heather is the one who gets the really, really gritty, unfiltered stuff. And I'm so lucky for that. And she's also this like incredible like spiritual guru, but not the annoying kind. She's very relatable and has a great sense of humor, and wonderful fashion sense. And so we are going to be talking about some really rich, deep spiritual practices and truths, but Heather does it with accessibility. And so I'm great. So I'm going to share just a few things about you more specifically than the fact that you're my friend. And then you can fill in any blanks, Heather. But so Heather's been on this journey. She started in ministry and then she ended up getting her MFT, her marriage and family therapy license, was a therapist for many years, has kind of always taught and done retreats. And then for a season, you also worked in animal rescue at SeaWorld. And that is very true to, I think, Heather's heart of caring for the whole earth and the land and animals and human beings. And so that was a season, but then you got into spiritual direction, as well as like the wonderful stream of contemplation practices. And that really influenced you. And then you got very much into the wisdom tradition. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about that. There are wisdom streams within every faith tradition. We come from a wisdom approach, specifically within the Christian wisdom tradition. And maybe you can, in a moment, share a little bit more about that. But Heather has also been this wonderful part of not only the centering prayer world, but specifically Cynthia Bourgeau, who is a Episcopal priest who fuses her theology with like neurological studies and astrophysics. Is that fair to say, Heather?
Yeah.
And then Heather has also become a movement teacher in this older school of Gurdjieff. I don't know if we'll get into Gurdjieff. Maybe another time. So let's just back up for a minute. You fill in anything I missed. Can I also just add that we go out, well, we used to, with our husbands, and like Heather and Jeremy rock like the hard stuff. Like they can do an old fashioned or a Negroni, and like they like it neat on the rocks. And then Heather's husband, Charlie, wants the sweetest cocktail. He's like, he wants the fruity pina colada. And Heather can just drink what the old men are drinking. So
what the old men are true.
I just thought I'd add that. Do you want to fill in anything?
Oh, you're too kind, and and I fear y'all are gonna be disappointed now, but it's all okay. Oh no, Kim is such a treasure, and I'm so glad to be here. And yeah, my path has taken me in many different directions, as Kim has said, but ultimately, just one of wanting to be a responsible human and live out the path of conscious love that I believe Jesus laid out for us, which is why the wisdom path has been so incredibly profound, I guess, for me. And so just to speak, I guess, a little bit more about that, there are different meanings in wisdom when people talk about that word. But as I'm talking about it, it is really more from the perspective that Cynthia Bourgeau lays out in her teachings. She's been a teacher of mine for a very long time. And with that, the idea just being that wisdom is not necessarily knowing more, but it's about knowing with more of us, with more of ourselves, with our mind, with our hearts, with our bodies, with our entire being, similar to what Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. But we don't just do this for ourselves. We do this so that we can show up in the world differently and love our neighbors as ourselves. So so part of what I hope to bring today is a bit of awareness of that three-centered way of being that I'm talking about and that wisdom invites us into.
Thank you. That's great. As always, if you have questions, you can go ahead and chat them in, and I'll make sure Heather gets those. But Heather is going to be leading us through a couple of practices today. And when we mentioned Cynthia Bourgeois, some of you maybe have never heard of her, and that's totally fine. But you may have heard of Richard Rohr, who is a Catholic priest who runs the Center for Action and Contemplation. And he does all kinds of devotionals. He's written many books. He and Cynthia teach together a lot, and she is a common feature in his weekly devotionals, and she has her own list of books that she's written, but that might be a connecting point for you. So Heather, I think that I'm going to go ahead and turn this into speaker view so that you can take it away and then lead us into whatever you want to do. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. So welcome everyone. And one of the things that I like to do at the beginning of just gathering in this way is just to take a moment to become present. And so I invite you right now just to really begin to sense your body here now. Sense your feet connecting to the ground if they're on the ground or wherever they are. Sense that where our feet are meeting the ground, each of us are held up by that same ground, wherever we're joining from. And take a moment just to sense your chair or couch or whatever's holding you up. And allow your eyes just to go wherever they want. Let them take in your environment, the place that you're in. Let them see, just see shapes, colors, images. Just really becoming present, letting your mind be here, not thinking about where you've been this morning, what you've been doing, or what you'll have to do after this. Just simply coming into this present moment. Notice sounds, anything that your skin feels, the temperature of the air, your clothes. And becoming aware that we are in God and God is in us. It is in God that we live and move and have our being. And so just to keep us coming more fully into ourselves and into silence within and deeper into God, I'm going to lead us in a short chant. And chanting is one of the practices that is really focused on in the wisdom tradition, and monks have really practiced chanting in monasteries for years, chanting the Psalms as a way of actually letting the truth of the words reverberate in your being, sensing within a vibration from your voice moving through you. And it's a bit of a prayer that involves all three centers. It involves our body and sensing that vibration. It generally opens up our heart. The words touch our heart and it stills our mind. And so I'm just going to invite us to chant for a moment, and then we'll move into our first practice. So the words to this chant are: draw me deeper into silence, draw me deeper into you. And of course, that you is the great I am. our infinite God. Draw me deeper into silence. Draw me deeper into you. Draw me deeper into silence. Draw me deeper into you. Draw me deeper into silence. Draw me deeper into you. Just taking a moment to allow those words, whether you chanted them with me or just heard them, let them draw you deeper into silence. Draw you deeper into God. These times that we're in are pretty challenging times. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and in the middle of a pandemic, we're all having different experiences. But for most of us, we're having to navigate through some pretty challenging emotions and nervous system states, things like fight responses or flight responses or freeze responses, things like irritation, agitation, worry, concern, confusion, depression, grief. So we're having to navigate these within ourselves, but then when we look out into the world, so is everyone else, and collectively we're also experiencing some of these processes and dealing with it and navigating it in different ways. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time now with a practice that might be familiar to some of you called the welcome practice, also known as the welcoming prayer. And as we do this practice really is, again, it's a three-centered practice, because we're going to be paying attention a bit to our thoughts and our emotions, and then we're going to drop deeper into our bodies and really be present there. So I'm just going to read a few quotes. Perhaps you may have heard the poem I will read, and then we'll spend some time working with this, welcoming ourselves as we are, because these are real, and we want to be kind to ourselves and rest in God's love in this time, and really allow some of these more challenging emotions to be tended to in a way that helps us move into a wider, more expansive space, so that we really can love those in our lives. And so first, this quote by Angela Silesius. I can't say that very well. But it's simple. God, whose love and joy are present everywhere, can't come to visit you unless you aren't there. God, whose love and joy are present everywhere, can't come to visit you unless you aren't there. We'll come back to that quote in a bit. This other quote, or poem rather, from Rumi, called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. Welcome and entertain them all. We're going to take a moment to welcome and entertain all of our guests. So I invite you to close your eyes, to find a comfortable sitting position where your back is supported and your head able to rest on your shoulders. And again, just sensing the support of the couch or the chair or the earth underneath you, holding you up. We'll move through this practice a few times, welcoming different emotions. And then we'll take a moment to reflect on that. So as your eyes are closed, I want you to just check in with yourself. Maybe recall a moment from today or this past week of agitation, of irritation, of frustration, maybe even anger. We're going to spend some time with this emotion first. Just noticing times that maybe you were shorter than you wanted to be, your fuse just right there ready to blow, snapping at somebody, or just finding yourself upset with anger. And I just want you to take a moment to be present to that particular experience, or maybe it's a set of experiences. Letting them come to mind. And as you do that, becoming present to what's happening in your body. For every emotion, there's a corresponding bodily sensation. Not always the same one, but we'll notice in our body how that irritation or frustration emerges, maybe a tightening or a heat, something like that, without analyzing or judging yourself or that moment. Just inwardly tune into what's happening in your body. You're also not trying to change it in any way, just allowing it to be there, not repressing it. And even begin to name it inwardly. Anger or irritation or frustration or rage even. And as you are present, as Rumi suggests, and I just invite you to begin to welcome it. Welcome irritation. Welcome frustration. Welcome anger. And then begin moving to welcome the actual sensation. Welcome tightness. Welcome clenched fists. Welcome heat. And this may seem counterintuitive, but in fact, by welcoming this, we can become spacious towards it. We can recognize that it can be endured if we don't reject it or repress it or push it away. In fact, we create an atmosphere of inner hospitality, like a guest, seeing it coming in and sitting on the couch. Welcome. And once you've really been able to welcome it, to genuinely welcome it, you may experience a bit of a shift inside, a little bit of an opening, the energy loosening up. If it's a more challenging one, it may stay the same, but that's okay. Again, we're not trying to make anything happen. And once you've sufficiently welcomed it, really welcomed it, I invite you to repeat these words with me, either inwardly or outwardly. I let go of my desire for security and survival. I let go of my desire for esteem and affection. I let go of my desire for power and control. I let go of my desire to change the situation. We're not saying these words, saying that whatever those situations were okay. We're more saying it's okay for me to experience this and let it move through. We'll take a moment now to go back through that practice with worry and concern. So I just invite you to come with me into these emotions, knowing there's freedom. If you need to linger in the other one a little longer, feel free to do that. If you're ready, just noticing moments of worry or concern. And beginning to welcome those. Welcoming the sensation you notice in your body along with that. Welcome worry. Welcome concern. Welcome fear. Maybe there's a bracing inside. You can welcome bracing. Welcome tightness. As you welcome, remembering you're in God and God is in you. So you cannot be overcome by this. Once you notice that you're really able to welcome it, creating that atmosphere of inner hospitality, we'll let it go. I let go of my desire for security and survival. I let go of my desire for esteem and affection. I let go of my desire for power and control. I let go of my desire to change the situation. And we'll go through this one final time. Again, if you need to stay here with worry and concern, feel free to. Otherwise, I invite you just to take a breath, sensing God in your midst, and just recalling any moments of confusion or heaviness, and beginning to welcome those. Moments of not knowing, lack of clarity, even little moments of depression. Welcome. You may notice in your body some fuzziness or heaviness or blankness. Welcoming that as you would a friend. And once you've really allowed yourself to welcome that without suppressing or judging or rejecting, we'll let it go. I let go of my desire for security and survival. I let go of my desire for esteem and affection. I let go of my desire for power and control. I let go of my desire to change the situation. This is not an easy practice. It's not for the faint of heart. But I invite you right now just to see if you notice anything about your presence, anything about that was supportive or helpful to you in any way. And I invite you to share a word or a phrase in the chat box with Kim. We'll take a minute or two for anybody who wants to just name something about what you noticed in that practice before we move on to our next one. If not, we can linger in silence. Anybody coming through there, Kim?
They will. There's usually a little delay. But I feel great, Heather. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a it's such a simple but profound practice, and it's very counterintuitive, I think, because there are such accompanying thoughts of judgment, usually for me personally, or shame around my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice because I had very specific examples coming up with the different sections. Um, but to welcome those with that kind of hospitality. Um, so Nancy's words are calm and quiet. Debbie's words are very relaxed. Ginny's word is calm. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank
That's
you.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is a practice that hopefully we can, with ourselves just return to in these times, being kind and hospitable to all of that. And I think where I want to take us to from there, unless there's some more words you wanted to.
Yeah. Free is coming up from Sarah and Irene, peace and harmony. And yeah, those are great words.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, let's just take a moment with those words. So many beautiful words. And when I say take a moment with them, let's just notice that this is something that we're generating together and allowing to be generated through us,
Yeah.
through God, through us.
Yeah.
And that actually does lead into where I wanted to take us next, which is really part of the wisdom path in the Christian tradition, and really the Christian tradition in general, is learning to see differently and learning to see that the kingdom is present here now in our midst, and that we are invited to live in a place of abundance. And this abundance doesn't have anything to do with our external circumstances. And as we just welcomed all kinds of challenging emotions that have come from, I'm sure, all kinds of challenging circumstances, there's still an ability to drop into the peace and the calmness and the freedom that is available to us. And so we're going to spend a little time now with the idea of abundance and reflecting on that, and taking that a little bit deeper.
That sounds great.
So I do want to come back to just some parables in Luke that you're very familiar with. I'll read them once and talk a little bit about them, and then we'll go into our practice. So this is the parable of the rich fool in Luke 12. Excuse me. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus said, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A human's life does not consist in the abundance of one's possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, 'You have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?' This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich toward God." And he goes on to say to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to his life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the lilies grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about this, for the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek first God's kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. So these are very familiar parables to us, but what they're really getting at is this idea that abundance is always around us and that what we need is given to us. And so if it's not coming materially, it must be talking about something else. And I just want to read these words from Cynthia Bourgeault on this idea of abundance in these parables. She says, so it's not that the world itself is untrustworthy, but rather that the world is abundant and provident beyond belief, that what flows through it is coherence, an order, a beauty, an energy, a life force that is a direct expression of the heart of God. Right here, God is manifesting God's heart, and you're part of it. And if you touch one single piece of that, you touch the whole thing. When you get the experience of the heart, you get the whole heart. I just want to pause and say our hearts are fractals of the divine heart. It's our hearts that help us see, not our emotions necessarily, but our hearts as organs of spiritual perception. She goes on to say, so for Jesus, the world was suffused with the glory and tenderness and providence. But whenever we go into any kind of brace position, clinging, defending, self-justifying, insisting, any of those actions immediately make us essentially spiritually blind. They cut us off from the whole, and we can no longer see the abundance that's flowing right there for all of us to behold. Because fear, which is what all these options come down to, cloud the eye of our heart so we can't see. And so it's not that fear is bad or wrong, or that any of these emotions that we were welcoming are bad or wrong, but when they become the only thing that we become too constricted and our vision becomes too small. So it's not that they're bad or need to go away, but part of what the welcoming practice does is help us access a wider place within that can allow that to be there, but not be limited by it. And so when we can do that, we can begin to say, yes, I'm afraid. Yes, I'm irritated. Yes, I'm confused. And that doesn't mean there isn't abundance. That doesn't mean I can't see the beauty and the support and the love that is always moving towards us. That God is always moving towards us. It is my pleasure, little flock, to give you the kingdom. So we're going to take a moment to reflect on that. And before we do, we're going to do another chant. And the words to this chant are, let me hear what you will speak when I turn to you, my heart. And as I said earlier, that heart is really the place that can see this abundance, and it's more than just emotion. It's a place of real embodied knowing and being able to hold paradox. It's our heart that can hold both and, more than our minds that want to go either or. So keep that in your heart as we chant this, and then we'll move into our reflecting on abundance. I just also want to invite you, if you're at home or wherever you are, if you can't join in, just take the words in. But one of the beautiful things about this is that you don't have to worry about if anybody else hears you. So chant away. Let me hear what you will speak when to you my heart. Let me hear what you will speak. When I turn to you my heart, let me hear what you will speak. When I turn to you my heart, let me hear what you will speak. When I turn to you my heart. We're going to move into a Lectio Divina of sorts, a divine reading, another practice in which we gaze on and reflect on something. And this time it's going to be your life. And so I invite you to take a moment to gently review your day or your week or your month. And as you do this, you're looking for the gentle touch of abundance of God in your life. It may be a moment or an event or a relationship or an animal or a moment in nature. I just invite you to reflect and see if you can identify a glimpse of abundance, of support, of something beyond you moving toward you. As you recall those moments, begin to see if there's one that has a little more energy, one moment that stands out to you. Begin to meditate on that. Recollect the setting, the sensory details, the sequence of events or what happened in that moment. Begin to see it in your mind, in your heart. Come back to the sensations that you experienced in your body, a warmth maybe, or an ease, or an openness or expansiveness. Or perhaps it was difficult to receive that coming towards you. So maybe there was a bit of discomfort. That's okay too. Beginning to really allow yourself to see the image of that. To remember the emotions it brought up or the feelings. Gratitude or whatever it was, love, taking it in again. Noticing how God was present there in that moment. Noticing how God was at work in your soul. Noticing to what extent you were aware of that abundance, that support, without judgment, just noticing. Just listening. What might God be inviting you into as you recall this? What might God be saying to you in this experience, through this, or desiring for you? And as you're aware of this, begin to see if there's a response emerging in you toward God, a response to that abundance or that invitation. And use a word or a phrase to offer that up to God, or a word or phrase to take that deeper within yourself, like a short prayer, breath prayer, or a mantra. Could be something like, help me receive your abundance, or simply thank you. Be present to your own inward, authentic response. When you're ready, this final moment of just resting in God. And just noticing now something about that experience, your presence. And as we continue to rest, I do invite you, if you would like, to place your word or your phrase or your mantra or your prayer in the chat box, to do so. And to continue to receive the abundance as you hear any of these shares.
I'll share mine, Heather, which is, I am enough, God is enough.
Mm.
Kathy shares, praise be to God. And earlier, she shared about awareness around feelings of anger and fear, with calm and acceptance coming in during the welcoming prayer.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, if there's more comments from there, feel free to add those in.
And Sarah shares, I am grateful.
Mm.
You know, these practices are new to some. Some are very familiar with meditation and Christian contemplation, and some are not. And it can be intimidating to even hear those words. But I think when you move through it, you realize we're just reflecting on things God has already invited us to reflect on, whether it's being nourished by, you know, the sacred scriptures or being nourished by the abundance of nature or our relationships or some of the different things that you named. Debbie shares thankful. Lorna shares God's balm.
Mm.
Balm. I was like,
Yes.
I like that word.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. There's just I'm always as I've engaged these practices now for years, it still is both a surprise and a comfort for me the way that my body shows up, the
Mm.
actual physical sensations I have in my body, whether that is like a relaxed tingling or like just a washed over calm.
Mm.
And we just get moving in life, and it's not until we really slow down and even honor a space so that our thoughts can start to slow down, our hearts can be present with what is, and then noticing, oh, hi body, like you're here too, and you've been in some physical discomfort, or have been you use that word bracing, which is such a good word, but you've been braced internally and externally.
Yeah.
And there's this invitation to really meet the divine in the fullness of our being, and really showing up for ourselves too. I think sometimes we're absent from ourselves.
Absolutely. Yes. And the body, coming back to that, since you are bringing us there, it's like if we can allow that to go in and notice, oh, I'm bracing, and I don't need to try to get myself not to brace, but if I can take in the support that is here and notice that in my body, it's like, oh, there's so much that can actually be nourishment to our bodies. And our bodies have an intelligence about them, right? It's our bodies that know how, like, can learn how to float, and there's such a spiritual truth just in floating, right? Leaning back, trust. That's something that our mind has a hard time with, or I'm doing this gesture, even this. It's like this evokes something in us when we do this that is beyond.
We've been talking in this space and even in church on Sundays, about how the ancients intuitively knew this. Other things were perhaps not as sophisticated um, in their cognitive approach or what they knew of the world, but they instinctually knew how to connect with the land and how to bring their bodies into worship, and that it was true and it did something to them to lift up their hands or to walk it out or whatever it is. And I love, Heather, that you brought chant in. And for those of you following Andrew's hymn times, he features chant as part of a question and response in his last video to us, and actually touches on all the neuro and physiological benefits of chant. I think the first time I did it was with you, Heather, and I like got the giggles. I was like, I've never done this. And but it's so simple, and it is such a gift to my heart and my mind and my body. In There's no performance. It's like just the vibration, and it helps me
Yeah.
like keep in step with the spirit in a different way.
That's right. I know we could have spent the whole hour just on chanting and what that, does, and how that practice has been around for all these years. But yes, it is such a beautiful, rich practice.
Heather, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you.
I love you. And I'm so glad that my dear beloved community could have just a little slice of you. And thank you for your offerings. Friends at home, this video will be up. And so you can return to it. I think I tend to circle back and write in the comment section some of the steps. So I can do that for welcoming practice so that those who continue to view it can know how to do it on their own, or that they can move along with you as well.
Excellent. Perfect.
Peace to all of you this Thursday morning.
Yes.
And you are not alone. And God is with us and in us and surrounding us. And we care about you. And may we go with that mindfulness of the spirit of abundance that is here even now, even in a time like this, even with our different circumstances.
That's right. Thank you, Kim. Yes. May we have eyes to see and hearts to receive that. Beautiful.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.